PJ, welcome to the show.
Thanks, brother. Super glad to be here. Really, really nice to reconnect with you.
100%, dude. Thanks for joining me. So we were just chopping it up for about 25 minutes before we press record. So we finally had to press record and jump in. But dude, for people that maybe aren't familiar with you and your story, give us the spark notes. You know, who you are, where are you coming from? What are you doing now?
Okay, so I'm a little dude in a wheelchair. 4 feet tall in the chair, maybe 5'1" if you stretch me out. And I've had my particular disability since I was born. It's a very rare form of muscular dystrophy that was expected to take my life by 7. I've lived more than 45 years longer than doctors ever expected. And I've lived a better life than most able-bodied people, despite my physical disability, despite being in a wheelchair. I've played wheelchair sports competitively. I hold a black belt, 10th degree black belt in combat martial arts. I snow ski, I water ski, aqua jet packing, all of the fun things. So I don't let the disability stop me. I've always pushed forward. Well, my disorder is progressive, which means that as I get older, I'm going to get weaker. And I go through long bouts where nothing happens, like 25 years maybe, and I don't get weaker. And then one night in December of 2000, I think, I went to bed, and the next morning I woke up and I had no shoulders and I had no triceps or no hands, meaning the day before I could hold a bar of soap in both hands out slightly above my shoulders. The next morning, I had no shoulder strength and I had no hand strength. So overnight, I lost it. And then for 3 months, I was like, oh my God, this is it. I don't want to die. This is crazy. This is not how I die. This is not how I go out. And I kept fighting and I kept struggling. And that morning, I had to still go to the bathroom. I still had to get in and out of the shower. I still had to get dressed. I still had to take care of myself as best as I possibly could. And so I found a way to get up on the side of the bathtub, go to the bathroom, get in, get out of the shower with no shoulders and no hands. I figured it out, made it happen. And that's the story of my life, right? I've done this repeatedly over and over and over. In 2000, actually in 1997, well, you know what? In 1997, I'll make this short. I got hit by an SUV, knocked out into 3 lanes of traffic. And fortunately, there happened to be an EMT team that saw everything happen, picked me up, took me across the street to the hospital where, they treated me. And I spent 4 months in physical therapy. And the last day of physical therapy, my physical therapist said, PJ, I don't know what's wrong with you. And I couldn't lay down. I couldn't sit up. I couldn't push my wheelchair. I couldn't roll over. I couldn't feed myself. Not because I lost strength in my arms or anything like that, but because it hurt so bad. My hips hurt so bad. There was not any place that didn't hurt. I was struggling. I was suffering. And I couldn't, I'm going to say I couldn't live like that. But when you're forced to live in pain and struggle, you can do one of 2 things. You can accept it and move on, or you can resist it and quit. And I wasn't in the resist it and quit. I was in the figure it out, find a way. This is not how I'm going to live, And so I was in that fighting stage. And it's interesting because often I'll say that resilience is basically the opposite of resistance, but they work in tandem. There are some things in your life you should be resisting. And if you're not, you probably are getting sucked into a black hole or void somewhere that's stealing away power, energy, connection, relationships, financial abundance, all of these crazy things. And so in that struggle, on the last day, he said, look, I've consulted every book that I had from my college training. He said, I've talked to my college professors. I've talked to my mentors. I've consulted medical journals. He's like, I don't know what's wrong with you. And just so everybody knows, you might be thinking, well, why didn't you get like an MRI or an X-ray? Because the curvature of my spine, let me explain to you what I actually look like. My belly button is literally right now sitting on the seat between my thighs. So imagine leaning forward in your seat that you're listening to this until your belly button touches your chair between your thighs. Then arch your back until your shoulders and head are upright. That's what I look like. The back of my seat is probably 10 inches between my shoulder blade and the back of my seat. That's what I look like. So I don't fit into MRI machines, and x-rays can't get a good x-ray of my hips. So he said, my one mentor that I haven't talked to yet asked me if maybe you popped your hip out of place when you hit the concrete. And I was thrown out into 3 lanes of oncoming traffic. Fortunately, and my wheelchair was crumpled underneath the SUV. And as I'm flying through the air, I had one thought in my mind that said, God, whatever you do, don't let him roll over my pelvis. When I hit the ground and came to a stop, he did too. He came to a stop leaning and resting his front driver's side wheel, resting against my pelvis bone. Had he rolled 2 more inches, Mike, he would have crushed my pelvis. I was really fortunate that day. I wasn't intended to die, but I was intended to learn something. What was I intended to learn? Let me tell you this. The last day, my PT said, let me palpate your hip, which means he pushed through my abdominal wall, right above my bladder, and pushed all the way back to my pelvis bone, through the front of my body, through into my pelvis bone. And so that doesn't feel very good. But he goes, oh, that's the problem. It feels like your right pelvis bone got popped out of place when you hit the ground. So I rolled over on my side and he said, this is going to hurt. And he grabbed a hold of my pelvis bone and he goes, 1, 2, 3, pop. Ah, hurt so bad. Oh my God. I felt like I could get up and walk, right? But this is the thing. I was faced with the challenge. I was faced with pain. I was faced with the adversity. And I said yes anyway. Because if you don't understand, all of the relief is on the other side of the pain. You can stay on this side of the suffering and the struggle. And you can talk about how much pain you're in. You can talk about the difficulties. You can talk about all of the things that aren't going right in your life or in your relationship or with your business, or you can do something about it. And I was like, you know what? It's going to hurt, but I'm willing to do it. The moment I got through it, the moment we popped me back into alignment, the moment you pop yourself back into alignment with your business or your relationship or the way you think about yourself, the moment you realign, immediately all of the suffering goes away. And once the suffering goes away, you're filled with this massive amount of appreciation and gratitude, and you're empowered to move forward. And that's the nature of who I am. And one last thing, in 2019, I caught some kind of virus, lost 85% of my physical strength and probably 50% of my lung capacity. 9 months later, I'm having lunch with some friends and they said, how is it that you're still happy? And I said, look, guys, I could be sad and hurt and upset and disappointed and frustrated and all of these terrible things. I said, but that feels bad. And feeling bad feels bad. And if I have a choice, I'm going to choose to feel good. I'm going to choose to be positive and optimistic and say, look, even though this is where I am right now, that's still where I want to go. Because resilience is born from commitment. And I just focus on where I want to go my whole life. I don't pay attention to my disability. I focus on where I want to go. And that's where my resilience comes from. Because resilience is born from commitment.
Dude, I love that. I literally posted a reel on Instagram this morning. I recorded in my car right after the gym, and it was around self-talk, right? And essentially it was, as the day that we're recording this, it's January 25th. I've had more days out of the state of New York than in it because I've been traveling a lot this week or this month for work, and very run down. Like I could tell, essentially the story I was telling was like, I could tell myself the story of like, I'm tired, my body hurts, it's hard to wake up in the morning, all these things that don't fucking serve me at all. Or I could tell myself, this is what winning feels like. And this is a season. And this season might require a little bit more self-care than I typically do, but it does not require deviating from my commitments. Right. And like, this too shall pass, and just kind of painting that picture, because that story, well, that serves the person I want to become.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of ways that we can look at this, right? One is the real struggle is inside of your mind. And so a lot of times when I work with guys, women too, but when I work with clients, it's this idea that your suffering and struggling comes from your thinking. And so the first stage in becoming resilient in my world is let that shit go, because we've got the conscious mind, we've got the unconscious mind. And the conscious mind, if you hear me say you, I mean you, the conscious you, or your intention, that's you, that's your choice. The unconscious mind, you'll hear me refer to as it. And sometimes it just gives you a lot of negativity and tries to hold you back and keep you down. Why? Because it doesn't want you to suffer and struggle. Believe it or not, it's your best friend. So it's going to give you all kinds of crap, right? Sometimes you just want to say, shh, it, because that's all it's going to give you is shit. However, if you can get to that place where you go, okay, that's in my mind, let me let that go for a minute and just shift into my body. The moment you shift into your body, and then if you really want to go deeper, you shift into your heart. And if you really want to be empowered, you shift into this place where you buckle your belt below your belly button, above your groin line. You shift into that place. All of a sudden, what happens is your being, and I mean that, your fullness, your being shifts into a state of empowerment. And you go, okay, I can do this. Because you're no longer fighting against your mind. There's a part of your being that says, no, this is the direction we go. There's an authenticity, there's a truth, there's an inner power that says, this is the direction I want to go. And if we look at that, if we take a different metaphor and we say, the mind is trying to talk you out of going. If there is a man or another human being standing in your way from what you want to do, and they keep pushing you back, because that's in essence what your mind is doing. Like, I should go, no, I'm not going to go. You should go, no, you shouldn't go. But I need to go, no, you're not going to go, you're too lazy, right?
Yeah.
It keeps pushing you back. If there's another man that was pushing on you like that, would you be like, okay, and then just sit down? Would you quit? Would you turn around and walk away? Or would you be like, yo, mofo, you better get out of my way because it's about to be on. I'm going to push through you. I see what it is that I want, and you're in my way. I don't mind going around you, but as long as you keep standing in my way, I'm going to go through you.
That's so good. That metaphor, like that visual is so interesting because we tolerate it from ourselves, but we should be the ones that have our own back more than anything else.
Yep.
It's
And
so
when you say we, what you really mean is you, the conscious, intentional you, not the unconscious mind.
yeah.
The intentional you that creates the commitment. You're
Yeah.
always committed to something. The question is, are you committed to what your conscious mind wants? Or are you committed to what your unconscious mind wants? Where are you more greatly committed? Because that is the resilience you're going to develop. You're either going to be resilient against all the delicious, wonderful growth, right? No. I'm going to resist all the wonderful, delicious growth, and I'm going to be resilient over here. I'm going to stay super strong in my cocoon in my cave and stay weak and small, right? Or you're going to choose to be committed about in terms of personal growth, or emotional growth, or financial growth, or growth within your relationship, or expanding and exploring within your world the way you want to. If you're doing that, then you're saying you're resilient towards that goal and you're resistant towards the weakness.
Yeah.
Resilience and resistance work hand in hand. The question is, are they in the right alignment, or do you need to flip them? I'll bet most people listening need to flip them in some area of their life. Remember, your physical, your emotional, your intellectual, your spiritual, your social, your financial. There are a lot of aspects of you. Where do you need to flip that resilience resistance model?
So tell me more about that, because you've alluded to this relationship between resilience and resistance a couple times now, and I'm curious if you can elaborate. You said that they were counter.
People would refer to them as opposites.
Yeah.
But I would say that the opposite of resilience is apathy. You just don't care. You're not even in resistance.
Yep, I could see that.
Because resilience is a motivator. Resistance is a motivator. Okay. Apathy, there's no motivation whatsoever.
Yeah.
So they are, if you think about them like magnets that are repelling each other, that's what you want resistance and resilience to do. Because if they're repelling against each other, they're attracting in the other directions.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but you get to choose, am I going to be attracted to the resilience of personal growth and resist the weakness, or am I going to be attracted to the weakness and resist the personal growth?
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah, no, it does. So when you're saying that people need to flip them often, can you elaborate on what you mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me see if I can give you let me give you a personal story. Okay. When I lost that strength in 2019, and I lost 85% of my strength, I couldn't get out of my own bed very easily. And
Yeah.
then when I did roll out of my bed, I couldn't sit up very easily. I had to fight and fight and fight. And I had never had panic attacks or anxiety attacks before in my entire life, right? And at first, I thought I was dying, and I was sitting at the end of my bed crying, and I was saying, "I don't die like this. I don't die like this. This is a weak way to die. I don't die like this. No, I am resistant to this." Right? That is a great example of being resistant to that. But what was I resilient to? I was actually also resilient to holding fast to being aware of the panic attack and the fear of death. I was resiliently holding on to that. I
Yeah.
wasn't letting go of anything, right? Um, and so I needed for me to learn how to get past panic and anxiety. And I never had them before in my life. And it took me about 2 years to figure out how to get past them. And since I have, listen, man, so much better. And I help people get through that on a pretty regular basis because, man, like life is so much better without those things. And it doesn't
You're
mean that
telling
they
me.
won't come up again. Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't mean they won't come up again, right? Okay, and so when I found that, what I was able to say is as soon as I would feel it rise, okay, and I used to be like, oh God, I can feel it coming, right? And somebody would try to say, well, just calm down, just breathe. And I'm like, you don't understand. So I was resistant to them trying to help me grow, right? But I was resilient towards holding on to that, like, oh my God, here it comes. I'm getting panicky. I don't know what to do. Right. So I was like, I'm holding on to this. I'm resiliently going to resist anybody trying to give me any good advice. I'm going to hold on to this. I needed to flip that. I needed to resist the panic and the anxiety and become resilient towards what it was I wanted, which is a fresh state. Okay. And so I had to flip those. I had to flip the things that I'm attracted to and flip the things I'm committed to.
Mm-hmm.
Before I was committed to the fear, I was committed to paying attention to the pain and the problem and the suffering.
Got it.
But when I flipped it, I was now committed to getting beyond that. So then I would literally wake up in the middle of the night and I would go, oh, I can feel the panic starting to rise. And I would ask myself 2 questions. Do I like how I'm feeling right now? And I would say no. And I would say, okay, what would I rather feel instead? And always, for whatever reason, my brain would always come up with 3 answers. And it could be any three, but it would always come up with three. Like, for example, if I asked myself, what would I rather feel right now? I would say passion, kindness, and love. Right. So those are just the things that come up to me right now. So then I would go, okay, well, I felt passion before. So let me feel that. So I would manifest it. I felt kindness before. Let me feel that. Okay, I feel that. Let me feel love. So I'm like, okay, I feel that. I don't have to like have conditions as a human being. You don't have to have the conditions to actually experience the sensation or the emotion. You can experience the
That's
sensation
crazy.
and emotion anytime you want. So just flip it and recommit. So what I mean by flipping it is flip the commitment. What are you
Yeah.
actually committed to? The resilience will follow suit, and so will the resistance. Does that make
Yeah.
more sense? Is that more clear?
Yeah, no, that's perfectly clear. And the example that always comes up, I mean, obviously we're talking in our business with a lot of sales guys and business owners. And the example of that I would always use with respect to the commitment, because I completely agree. You're committed to something. It's either the results or the excuses,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And that's basically the, I don't know, like the stereotypical example in our world of exactly what you're talking about.
Can I jump in just for a sec?
Yeah.
If you look up the word resilient, and you look at I love etymology. I love the root of words. I've always been kind of a super nerd that way. So if you look up the root of the word resilience, or resilient rather, you get something that means to bounce back, to jump back, to return, right? But it's this idea of coming back to something. If you look at the word result, it means to rebound or to leap back or to jump back. They
Yeah.
mean basically the same thing. And if you look
Yeah.
at the word re as the prefix, it means back or again, right? So we get knocked down, we get back up. One of my favorite quotes says, it's an old samurai quote that says, get knocked down 7 times, get up 8. Now listen, how can I get knocked down 7 times and get up 8? That doesn't make sense. I get knocked down once, I get up once. I get knocked down 2, I get up 2, or 3, 4, or 3, 3, 4, 4, right? All the way to 7, 7. Because some people don't even get out of bed. It's getting up in the morning and saying, this is how I'm going to live. I'm going to take the next
I never
step.
thought about that.
That's the very first time you get up, because some people don't get out of bed.
Yeah.
They stay in bed, right? That alarm goes off and they stay in bed,
Yeah.
right? Or they wake up and they're like, oh, I feel kind of sick or gross. I'm not going to get up. I'm just going to lay here. I'm going to call in sick today. Listen, there are going to be days when you legitimately are sick. It's okay. Take care of you.
Mm-hmm.
There are also days that you're just being lazy, right?
Yep.
And so this is never going to stand in terms of personal growth. And then if we look at the word resistance, let me circle back real quick. It also starts with re, meaning bounce back, or meaning again, or back, right? But the resistance part, the resistance, means to re-stand or stand again. So if I'm in resistance and all of a sudden somebody says, oh, well, you could do this. And I step back and I go, oh, nope, not going to do that. Or somebody offers something and I say, nope, I'm taking a stand. I resist what you're saying. I'm not moving from here. This is my place. I'm only staying here. So there's no movement. There's either movement away or there's no movement, right? But with resistance or with resilience and with results, dude, you're rebounding.
Yeah.
If you look at the name of your podcast, the result engine, an engine is a driver. So the question that the people that are listening should be in their mind is, okay, well, what drives me to be more resilient? What drives me to get the results that I want? What drives me to make the relationship the way I want it to be? What drives me to take the next step? What drives me? And listen, you could be asking yourself, what drives me to meditate? What drives me to pray? What drives me to just be patient? What drives me to be quiet and listen? So you don't have to just think about this engine as driving you in the Western world, drive, go, 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 go. That's great. You can do that also. But you can also be resilient to be calm. You can also be resilient in your patience. You can also be resilient in your peace of mind. You can also be resilient in just being present.
Yeah. Because
the definition of resilience in my mind is persevering through adversity towards your end result or goal while maintaining a particular emotional state and a position of power. So very simply, persisting through adversity while maintaining a particular emotional state and a position of power. What do I mean? Emotional state, like, and position of power. Emotional state, like, I'm excited about something. This is what I'm going to do. I can make this happen. This position of power where you feel a power in your body that says, ain't nothing going to stop me, man. I'm not going to be held back.
Yeah.
And because of my disability, I use my own ego sometimes. A lot of times we hear people say, drop that ego. Listen, man, my ego is what got me where I am.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be seen as a disabled man. I don't want to be seen as weaker or less than. So I let my ego drive me to force me into action. I got excited, man. Sorry, I didn't mean to commandeer the ship. I just got excited and I was on a hill, buddy, running down.
Oh, dude, I love that. I love that. And especially the last part, because I think this idea that, like, so one of my early, like, my speaking coaches early on, he used to just be like, everyone's got one. I'm just not ashamed to say it. Right. And I think it can be a superpower. Did you ever read the book Mask of Masculinity, Lewis Howes' second book?
I haven't read it yet, but I really like the idea behind it.
Yeah.
And I really love that he took the time to write that.
Yeah, it's a good book. And I think it was probably worthy of all the accolades that his first book got, but obviously it's a different market and not as marketable. But I remember I helped Lewis and his team throw their book launch in New York City and just kind of volunteered for it. And I asked him afterwards, because I read it and I was like, dude, like, I see some of these masks, but I totally see areas in my world where they serve me.
Yes.
And I asked him, and I'm like, dude, are these always a bad thing? And his answer was, it's like, no, we just need the self-awareness of know when we need to take that mask off. And I think ego is the same exact thing. Like, these things can be superpowers. They can be radically powerful in how we want to carry ourselves, but to what extent, right? And like, it's that balancing act.
are we using the mask? Are we using the superpower, or are we being used by it or limited by it? Right? Are we using it for growth, or are we allowing it to limit us?
Bingo.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. PJ, I'm curious how you developed this mindset. Now, obviously, you like briefly mentioned that you've lived well over 45 years past the doctor diagnosis, like slight flex, which is freaking incredible. But I'm really curious about the mindset that you've developed over the years. And I'm curious specifically if you can remember how long it took you to develop that. Like early on, were you receptive of it, or did you struggle with the disability and like the mental aspect of it? Like, what did that growth look like in those early years?
Yeah, listen, man, I'm in a gross advantage, not disadvantage. I'm in a gross advantage over everybody who's probably listening, because I've always had my disability. So I've
Yeah.
never known not having my disability. I threw away my leg braces in third, fourth, and fifth grade. So I didn't have my leg braces then.
Yeah.
And then I couldn't walk past the middle of eighth grade. So I had to get into an electric wheelchair. I got into college, threw away my electric wheelchair, and started using a manual wheelchair. I've never looked back. And even now, I can barely push my own manual wheelchair and can almost not stop it anymore. So, when I'm on stage speaking, woo, I don't get too close to the edge anymore. Because otherwise,
Yeah.
tuck and roll, baby, tuck and roll. But I've never struggled with my disability, except maybe a little in seventh and eighth grade. And I wasn't really struggling with my disability as much as I was struggling with the crazy hormone dump of that particular age.
Yeah.
And where does it come from? I've just always been told that I could do anything that I wanted.
Yeah.
Right. And so when I wanted to jump out of planes, my grandmother was like, "Oh my God, how are you going to let, PJ do that?" My mom said, "If he dies doing something he loves, and he dies with friends." So let me tell you two quick stories
Yeah.
that demonstrate my where this came from, and then my current expression of it. When I was 9 and 10 years old, when I grew up, my sister and I were not allowed to say the word can't, right? And you've heard that through probably
Yeah.
from many, many people. You maybe even were raised that way. My mom would say, "Can't doesn't live here. Can't doesn't mean a thing," and so she would always say, "Keep trying." So I remember when I was a kid, I'd get dressed, I put on my little leg braces, my little socks, my little chonies, my little pants, little shirt. They're not much bigger now, because I'm still a pretty small dude. And I would yell, "Okay, mom, I'm ready for you to come up and get buttoned and zipped and tucked in." And she would yell back, "Okay, I'm busy. You keep trying." And I would say, "Okay." And so I would fight and struggle and fight and struggle and fight and struggle to tuck my shirt in, to try and get my zipper zipped, and to snap my little snaps. And my
Yeah.
mom had taken rings and put rings. You know how the zippers have like that little hole in the tip,
Yep.
right? So my mom would put a ring through there, and then she'd clamp it closed so I could stick my finger in and pull it up. So she gave me tools that would allow me to figure out
Oh,
how to take care of myself. And while I fought and struggled and fought and struggled and fought and struggled, she would be sitting in her bedroom crying, because she wanted to come and help her son, but she also knew that at 9 and 10, I'd lived 2 and 3 years longer than I was expected to. And
yeah.
she said, "If he's going to live much longer, I want him to live the life that he wants." When I was 4 years old, she found me outside crying, and she was like, "What's wrong? Are you okay? What's going on?" I said, "I want to go to school, mommy." And she said, "Well, okay." So she took me to the doctor and said, "Can I send him to school?" And that's when the doctor said, "If you do, he'll be dead by second grade." And in right there, she said, "Well, it's his choice. He gets to make that decision." And later on, she was like, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to go to school." And she said, "Okay." So maybe it's partially my spirit, and maybe it's
Yeah.
partially the way my mom raised me, and then how does that translate to now? I don't, when I go to the Grand Canyon, I don't go to the Grand Canyon like everybody else. Most people go to the Grand Canyon, they go up to the rail, they look out, they're like, "Oh my God, this is beautiful." They get their picture taken, right? Do all that stuff. Then they go on to the next vista. When I go to the Grand Canyon, I go to the Grand Canyon with friends. We look around, we find some beautiful places, we decide where we want to climb, and we tuck the wheelchair underneath a bush or a tree. I climb on my friend's back, we climb up and over the rail, and down into the Grand Canyon. At one point, my friend Jeff is holding me by my wrists, squatting as low as he can. My friend Tim is about 2.5 to 3 feet below me, standing on about a 14-inch ledge, probably a 35-degree incline, right? Lots of gravel, kicked off most of the gravel. And Jeff goes, okay, Tim, I'm going to drop him on 3. And Jeff is literally, think about this, squatting, holding somebody by the wrist, dangling a dude over the edge of the Grand Canyon. And Jeff goes 1, 2, 3 and drops me, and Tim catches me. Had Tim missed, Tim would have dropped me. I would have cut myself wide open on the cliff that he was standing on. I would have fallen a half a mile before I probably would have hit anything. Tim squeezes me up against his chest. We walk between, or we squeeze between 2 big, massive stones. We walk out onto this ledge that we wanted to sit and look around and explore. Tim slips and falls on his butt and his back, slides to the edge, and his feet and ankles go over the edge. That's living. That's being resilient. Why? Because I'm not letting something stop me. I'm seeing what I want and I'm going after it. Why do I call that resilience? Because I had a commitment, and commitment gives birth to resilience. We found a way to overcome the obstacle. I don't look at the disability. I look at where I want to go and what I want to do. And this is what everybody who's listening to this should be doing too. They should be looking at where they want to go and finding a way to make it happen. I can't walk. So when I tell you I go hiking, I'm not hiking, man. I'm riding somebody else's back. You know, when I'm jumping out of a plane, I'm strapped to the front of a dude. It's more like being kidnapped when I go skydiving than it is actually skydiving. Because if I don't want to get out of the plane, I'm going.
Yeah.
You know, so
it's good accountability.
Yeah, exactly, man. Exactly. But this is the way we get to live. We can love our life. Listen, man, I want to live another 100 years. I'm 50, at the moment that we're recording this, I'm almost 54. I want to live another 100 years. And Tom Billio. Tom Billio used to talk about wanting to live forever too. And I'm like, thank God there's somebody else in the world that gets it. Yep. Right. And now he's pulled back from that a little bit. And I still want to live at least another 100 years. And everybody's like, oh, that'll never happen. You can never. We don't know where science and medicine are going. There's a real strong possibility that I could live a lot longer than most people think. Obviously, I already have. And so what am I going to do with that? Am I going to sit around and let life dictate the circumstances? Change is inevitable. Transformation is a choice. Change is inevitable. Transformation is a choice. You're going to change. Your life is going to change whether you like it or not. The question is, are you going to be subject to the change, or are you going to make a transformation? Are you going to create the change? Are you going to make choose the direction? How are you going to transform?
So good. I love that. I love that last part. And I'm always fascinated by, like, I don't know, I just firmly believe that like a little bit of a shift in perspective opens up an entirely new worldview. And specifically from like a motivation or like a like giving you the jolt that you need to move and act. Right. And I think that's a really good example of one. I think another one that comes to mind as you're sharing that is, there's this clip from one of Inky Johnson's most famous speeches where he's just like, I just believe that my family deserves the best version of me. Right. And then he goes on, he lists all the different people. Like, I just believe they deserve the best version of me.
I love that.
And, I don't know, I'm always fascinated by, because everyone's like, I want motivation. And it's like, okay, cool. Like, just take those different perspectives, like run that on repeat.
Yeah.
Right. I was in the gym this morning. This is a random aside, but hopefully it'll connect for you. Yeah. I was on the gym this morning and I was doing legs, and both of my knees were hurting, which, like, I'm 6'5", like 240-ish right now. Like at my peak, I was like 255, 260, like power lifter. Like, I'm a large human and my knees have always been fairly bad, right? Like ever since my soccer days. And so I'm doing these exercises, and the playlist I was playing was like my Spotify, like top songs from 2022. Right. So it's everything from like hood trap music in the gym to like country, like wedding playlist. Right. And because I got married in September, so we were listening
to congratulations, man. I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
all of a sudden my wedding song, mine and my wife's wedding song comes on, right? And it's Beautiful Crazy by Luke Combs. It's like a pretty chill country song. And I'm in the middle of doing like hamstring curls, like not a fun exercise at all. And I thought about it and I'm like, dude, this isn't motivating. But then I shifted the perspective. And it was exactly like the Inky Johnson thing. I'm like, wait a second. Who is that song for?
Yeah.
And am I really like, what better motivation do I need? All of a sudden, the perspective shifted to this is exactly why I sculpt this human. Like, this is exactly why I put this work in to become this version of me. It's for her, it's for everyone else in my world. Right. And just in that instant, like it was one of my last sets, and all of a sudden the weight was flying. Just a little bit of a perspective shift.
Massive. I've always said, I made this realization about 15 or 16. I remember telling my mom, I was like, my life isn't really for me. I said, it is for me, but the disability is not something that holds me back. My disability is a gift to other people. And that's the exact, I think, the same mentality, which is, why do I want to be here? So I believe that there are layers of manhood, right? We can go boy, we can go adult boy, we can become a man, we can become a gentleman, we can become a warrior, we can become a gentleman warrior. Okay. And I believe in being a gentleman warrior. The problem is most people don't make it past man, right? So they don't become gentlemen. And that's one of the things that I see in you as a gentleman. Now, when you start thinking about, wait a minute, who is this for? You start thinking about from the warrior's perspective, which is, if I need to stand up for my wife, right? Or I just want to go for a hike with my wife, I need to be in the best possible shape that I can so that I can be in service to that relationship.
Yeah.
And in my particular case, while it's not about the physical body, it is about my spirit and my heart. So I keep pushing my manual wheelchair, because if people look at me, they go, ooh, wait, at least my life ain't that bad, or they go, wow, if that dude can do it, I can do it too. And if I were in an electric wheelchair, to me, that's giving up. Now, at some point, maybe I'll have to go that route, but not yet. You know what I mean? Not yet. And I don't believe that you can quit. If you are a friend, a brother, a sister, a mom, a dad, a husband, a wife, a parent, you cannot quit, because when you quit, you give an unvoiced approval to other people that they can quit.
Yeah.
We can't do that. If we do that, then everything falls apart.
Slippery slope.
Yeah, say it.
It's a very slippery slope.
It's a landslide. If you've ever watched a landslide, a little piece goes and then the massive side of the cliff goes, right? It's a landslide. So as soon as one person quits, so many other people follow suit. And when one person picks up and says, we storm the beach in Normandy, we go, now everybody goes. Because it's the power and the authority of that warrior. It's the power and the authority of that gentleman. It's the power and the authority of a loving, nurturing, powerful woman, right? It's the authority of that leader that inspires other people to take action. The question is, are you going to be a leader in your own life, or are you going to let your life lead you? It's the unconscious, or it's the conscious. It's the it, or it's you. Who makes the decisions for you? Who makes the decisions for your future? It or you? I know who makes the decisions for me.
Yeah. Amen. PJ, before I ask the last question, I want to be respectful of your time. Where do you plug away? Where do you hang out on social? Where can people follow your journey? Check out what you're doing, plug away, and we'll link everything up in the show notes for people as well.
Cool, man. Thanks. Listen, I always just send people to my website. Why? Because the links to the social media are there, right? So just go to pjswisdom.com, pjswisdom.com, pjswisdom.com. And, if you are curious about the social media sites, just click on one of the links from there. That's just the easiest for people to go to.
Yeah. Always good to have one call to action too. So I love that. Guys, pjswisdom.com will be linked in the show notes. If you've enjoyed this as much as me, go and show some love, get connected, all that stuff. PJ, last question I have for you.
Yeah.
Going all the way back to some of those early years, 4 years old, saying you wanted to go to school, right? Your mother letting you struggle and learn these skill sets, right? Fast forward, far transcending past the years that they allowed for you, and doing all these crazy excursions with your friends, and really living like all the way to where you're at right now, where you're using your message as a gift for everybody, and really like changing the world for a lot of people this entire window.
Thank you.
What's been the biggest lesson that you've learned that has yielded the most results and had the biggest impact on your life and in your business?
Honestly, the very first thing that comes to mind, brother, is I don't quit, right? So I will say to myself on repeat, I'm not defeated, I'm discovering. I'll say, I don't quit, I'm not defeated, I'm just discovering, right? I'll say to myself, I'm the guy who loves a good challenge, right? And these kinds of ideas are all exactly the same. I don't quit. I'm not defeated. I'm discovering what's working and what's not working. I'm the guy who loves a good challenge, because every single, bro, it takes massive effort for me to roll over in my own bed. I can barely cover myself up. I can barely sit up. I can barely stop my chair. I can barely push my chair, but I do it every day. Why?
Yeah.
Because I'm the guy who loves a good challenge. And if you can think about what is that call inside of you, and you got to get out of your head, right? One thing that I did want to talk about and we didn't get to, and so if you do want to address it, we can, is everybody talks, and I've heard you say this too, everybody says that you got to find your why, you got to find your why. And maybe that's my why, right? Because I don't quit. I'm the guy who loves a good challenge. I'm not defeated. I'm just discovering, right? Maybe that's my why. But to me, finding your greatest why, if it's not already in you, you're going to struggle to find it. It's easier to go, what's the crap that's holding me back, and let that crap go, right? Because when you let that stuff go, now all of a sudden you go, oh, hold on, I don't have this anymore. I feel free to move forward. How do you do that? The easiest way right now is get out of your head and get in your body. So if you don't know what that mantra is for you, like mine is, I'm a guy who loves a good challenge, then get out of your head, just close your eyes, settle in your body, and get a feeling, and let that feeling be your mantra. Let that feeling be the driving force. You'll feel it. Everything, get out of your head, get in your body. You'll feel it probably in the center of your chest, maybe a little lower, and you'll feel this sensation that wants to move you forward. Open your eyes and move forward. Physically move forward. Open your eyes and get in action. Open your eyes and take that step. Because the moment you do, everything in the world changes.
Yeah. Dude, it's so powerful. I love that. And I'm glad you threw that in.
Thanks, brother.
PJ, thanks for joining me, brother. I really enjoyed this.
It's my honor and my pleasure. Thank you so much for this. And I really
100%.
believe in what you're doing. So keep it up.
Thank you. Thank you.